house. It was originally two-story log structures. And where we're standing right now, it would have been the dog trot. This was left open right here until about 1900, and then it was closed in. And the style of the house now, it was added on in 1842 by John Carson's son, Jonathan Logan Carson, and he added a third floor. He added the big wide porches on the front. He added another wing in the back and a step-down addition that you see here. That was another bedroom of what we now house the library and a porch on the back. So it was quite a massive undertaking. Now, the big building that he built in the back, which was called the L, it was the kitchen and boarding rooms, and it was gone before 1900. We don't know whether it was washed away or burned, or they just took it down. Yeah. But it was, we know that there was another big structure in the back. Okay. Let's go in the parlor.
This thing you could hold the sides if you wanted to.
Yeah.
That way you don't drop it.
I won't drop it, I promise. In the parlor here, we have several portraits of some of the Carson family members. This is a copy of a portrait of John Carson over here above the desk. The little girl above the mantle is Margaret Carson. She was the last Carson descendant to be born in this house. She was the youngest daughter of Jonathan Logan Carson, who had inherited the house from his father when he passed. And on the other wall is another daughter, Mary, and his wife, Jonathan Logan's wife, Mary Presnell Carson. And I want to get your attention to the folks on above the piano here. This is Samuel Price Carson and his wife, Catherine Wilson Carson. Samuel Price Carson served in the United States Congress, and when he was running for re-election against Robert Vance had made a comment about John Carson, saying that John Carson was not a true patriot. So the sons all took offense to this, and Samuel Price wrote a letter to Robert Vance challenging him to a duel. Well, at that time, dueling was illegal in North Carolina, so they went to Saluda, just over the South Carolina border, and they fought the duel. And Samuel Price fatally shot Robert Vance in that duel. Samuel Price's friend, David Crockett, was the witness to the duel, and he came back to tell the Carsons that Samuel Price had won the duel. But soon afterwards, Samuel Price and his family went to Texas. And while he was in Texas, he became one of the original signers of the Texas Declaration of Independence, and he became the first Secretary of State of Texas. Now, a little more personal about them, Samuel Price was married to Catherine Wilson Carson, which was his first cousin once removed. Her grandmother and his father were brother and sister. And also 2 other of her sisters had married 2 other Carson brothers. And one of the Carson sisters married one of her brothers. And when Samuel Price died at the age of 40, Catherine came back to McDowell County and married another brother, William Carson, and who had been widowed and left with 7 children. Wow. So they kept things very well in the family for sure. A couple of other pieces that I'll point out in here is this particular cabinet came out of the Conley home. Joseph Conley had been one of the original men who gathered here to form McDowell County, and this piece dates to around 1800. This little photograph shows a picture of that home when it was destroyed in the 1916 flood, and the piece of furniture did survive that flood. Okay. This picture shows another devastating tragedy in McDowell County, which was the burning of Marion. That happened in 1894. Just about the whole town had burned.
I remember hearing people talk about that.
Okay. Now, one little artifact I'll point out too in here is this item right here is a piece of beaded tapestry, and this is called a facial shield. And ladies in the period when they wore cosmetics, it was made out of beeswax, and if they sat near the fire, their makeup would melt. So this was kind of protect them from the heat of the fire, to protect their faces. So the comment, save face.
Yeah.
To that. But this piece came from the Green River Plantation, which when we go in the next room, I'll tell you about the Green River Plantation. This gentleman right here is Joseph McDowell Carson, the oldest son of John Carson, and he was the only one that was formally educated. He was a lawyer, but he made his fortune in the gold mining industry. He purchased some land where gold was found, and that's how he made his fortune. And the home that he built was the Green River Plantation, which is now in Polk County. It's right on the Rutherford-Polk County line, and it's basically like two huge mansions put together. But the facial shield that we just saw and the furnishings in this room came out of this home back in the 1960s when the Greenlee sisters purchased the Carson House and were going to turn it into a museum. They went to an auction there at the Green River Plantation and purchased the canopy bed, the chest, and the dresser, and the facial shield from there. One of the artifacts that we like to show is this particular cane right here. This cane was a gift to John Carson from his good friend, President Andrew Jackson. As a matter of fact, Andrew Jackson had given John Carson 2 walking canes. The other cane is now on exhibit at the museum in Raleigh. But this one is engraved from the tomb of Washington to Colonel John Carson. And we don't really know what, significance that saying was, but maybe one day we'll find out.
Mm-hmm.
We're all the time finding out more information from letters and correspondence that we get about the history. And this photograph right here is the same lady that her childhood portrait is over the mantle. This is her, little Margaret Carson.
Oh.
And in here we have, this is a lithograph of David Crockett, and this is his handwriting that says, I'm happy to acknowledge this to be the only correct likeness that's been taken of me. Signed, David Crockett. And in that corner over there is a copy of the letter that Samuel Price Carson wrote to Robert Vance challenging him to a duel. family library, and we have a lot of information about the families around McDowell County and North Carolina and surrounding states. So if you're ever want to find out more about if your family was from McDowell County, you can likely find a family history or something here about that. And it's also the workroom and everything else,
Yeah.
right now. And that's another portrait of John Carson up there above the fireplace.
Oh, the fireplace feels so good.
And the portraits on the wall over here are, there's 3 Greenlee sisters, and they were responsible for saving the house and turning it into a museum. And Moffett Sinclair Henderson was a Carson descendant who helped establish this place as a museum. Now, this is the dining room, and this is where a lot of business took place. Before McDowell County became a county, this is where a lot of things were held, like court was held here. They even had a jail here.
This is
it
where the
was
jail was. We was
a
wondering.
stagecoach stop, boarding house, general store. Folks came here as the polling place for voting. So it was quite a busy place. And when John Carson built this home in 1793, he acquired this land grant, which was 640 acres, and he built the house right where an established road was that was, went east to west from the Morganton area towards Asheville. So it was a busy road already. Now, a little something about the Carsons and the McDowells connection. John Carson's first wife was named Rachel McDowell. She was the sister of Joseph McDowell, who the county's named after. Joseph McDowell had been a very notorious leader during the Revolutionary War in the local militia here.
Ooh.
And so that's why they decided to name it after him. But anyway, there's a lot more connections with John Carson and Joseph McDowell's family. First of all, his first wife was a sister. And then when John Carson's first wife died, she died about the same time her brother Joseph McDowell died. So John Carson marries his sister-in-law, Mary Moffett McDowell, and so that she became his second wife. And the two of them had 5 more children together. John and his first wife had 7 children, and so he brought his stepchildren here, and then he and his second wife had 5 more children here.
Wow.
The platter there belonged to the Mary Moffett McDowell, and it was a family heirloom that had been passed down through the family. The walls in here are a little unusual.
I was noticing them.
It's amazing to me that they, with as many families that lived here, that nobody painted over it. This is one coat of paint. The designs on it are done with feathers, and it was done by a boarder who couldn't pay his bill, and he offered to paint the dining room in exchange for room and board.
Oh, wow.
And it was in this room, like I say, that McDowell County was formed. They met in 1842, and it officially became a county in March of 1843. And then court continued here until they built a courthouse in Marion. Now, at the time that they formed the county, they wanted to build the town here and the courthouse here. And Jonathan Logan Carson, who had inherited the house just recently from his father, did not want it here, so he donated 30 acres so they could build the town of Marion where it presently is today.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Look at that. That's an old organ. Oh, wow. Beautiful.
Now, probably one of the oldest items in the house is this picture right here. This picture came with the Carsons when they came from Ireland back in the early 1770s. We do have record that he arrived up north near Delaware in 1773.
I just love it.
The portraits here are two of John Carson's son. This is his son John, who was a doctor. He was self-taught, though. And the painting was done by George Ladd in 1836. George Ladd was an itinerant artist who went around from family to family painting portraits. This portrait here is Charles Carson, another brother. Also, the painting also done by George Ladd in 1836. And Charles had, he helped out with a lot of the gold mining business, and he ran a store in the Desertsville area. But he also liked to gamble and stuff, and he got into so much debt that he left and went to Texas, and his brothers had to sell his property and everything at auction to pay his debts. And over here in the corner, this is a photograph of the Brown family. They purchased the home after the last Carson descendants left. So, and at the time, you can still see the dog trot where we're standing right now is still open at the time.
Yeah, it is.
Ceiling's low.
Good thing I'm short.
In this case here are items that were donated by members of the Carson family, and they're all like Civil War period items. Many of the items were carried by some of the Carson descendants that served during the Civil War.
Okay.
In this room here, this is dedicated to the enslaved people who were here. When John Carson died, he did have 68 slaves listed on his will that lived here. And we know some things about some of the items here, in particular a couple of the quilts. This quilt in the front right here was made by a slave named Cadella, and it is an applique fabric onto a solid fabric. It was made about 1810, and it has very fine detail. About 20 to 25 years ago, the Carson House had this quilt restored and repaired at the Biltmore House, and it cost us $10,000 to have it repaired. that long ago. So
Wow.
it's quite a wonderful piece of work. And then the one behind it is also another example of a printed fabric that was appliqued, and it was done by a slave woman named Fatima. And here, this always fascinated me is, like, after the Civil War, what happened to enslaved people who were all of a sudden free. Some of them stayed on and worked for their former owners. This particular lady made a contract to work for molasses, potatoes, corn, and clothing for herself and her family. And that was for a year's contract to continue to work for him.
That's what I was reading about right here. Yeah.
Contract for labor. Another one of the Carson descendants, Simeon Carson, went on to become a physician, and he graduated first in his medical school class, and he established the Carson Hospital in Washington, D.C. He also taught different anesthesiology techniques and taught in the medical school in Washington. There's just, so much
Yeah.
to share. This particular piece of furniture is called a mammy bench, and it rocks. It's a bench. It was designed so a lady could sit and do work while she's tending to the baby, and then once the baby's bigger, this could be removed, and it could just be used as a rocking bench.
Uh-huh.
Very neat.
That's neat.
And the little baby.
Yeah. ABCs.
Yeah, that was a sampler done by Eliza Carson, 1832, and that she was also an enslaved woman, which at the time it was illegal for slaves to know how to read and write. So we think that's quite an unusual artifact there that belonged to her. Of course, there's so many things that, most of the enslaved people were in the mountain areas were trained at skills like blacksmiths were very highly trained, and they even made things like waffle.
Yeah.
This is a waffle maker.
That's cool. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
This one, each one a different design. And you had to have somebody that could do that, do the ironworks and everything for all making the tools and the horseshoes and everything that you needed, pots and pans. So, and a shoemaker was also needed so much. These are forms for shoes.
So all shoes, that was the form that they all got.
Well, they had different shapes.
Okay.
And sometimes the shoemaker would make a form for a particular person, and that was just their shoe form. They had, little ones, big ones, wide ones. This would be more for a woman's shoe,
Let's
and
see.
this for a man's shoe.
Uh-huh.
In this room, we have a lot of our textile items. The big loom probably would not have been in the house. It would have been in a separate building outside. But ladies may have worked in the house, you know, spinning and using the smaller tools. They did grow flax here, and of course they had a lot of sheep. They tried growing cotton, but it was too cold. But on some of their trips to Charleston, they would bring back bales of cotton and then spin it and weave it here. This over here, this is a flax break. When flax is grown, it grows in a stalk, much like you were doing wheat.
Yeah.
Then it had to be dried, cut, bundled, and then soaked in water for a couple of weeks, then dried again. And then when you take it out, you take the stalks here, put it in the flax break, and you slam it down like this to break the stalks. And then you would run it through a hackle, and you get your fibers. And then once you got your linen fibers, then you would spin them just like you would wool.
Yeah.
Okay? But you can see, you know, you can feel the little fibers in there, but you'd have to separate it from the shaft of the stalk of flax. So clothing was, you know, very hard to come by, and it was just took a lot of work to get those fibers and then produce clothing with it. And one of the things that they did is they blended wool and linen together, which is called linsey woolsey. Okay.
I would love to see one of those machines, see it work. You know, that would be so awesome.
This is the little schoolroom here. Back during the Civil War, the Carsons had a teacher who lived here in the home with them named Emma Rankin. And Emma Rankin kept a very detailed diary of what went on in day-to-day life, but in particular, she had an account of what happened when Stoneman's Raiders came through the area at the end of the Civil War. And she tells, you know, stories of, you know, how afraid they were and everything. But during that time, the Raiders took things out of the house that they could carry off. They burned a lot of the furnishings before they left. Then they poured sorghum on the floors and what was left in the house. But as a teacher, she taught the 2 Carson daughters and 4 other girls from another family here in the house. Here we have a cutaway so you can kind of see what the house looked like as original logs.
Wow. Yeah.
The original house, which is still underneath everything here, was a 2-story twin pen log structure. And the logs are made from walnut. These are walnut logs, which, you know, if you look around the grounds, we still have a lot of walnut trees around. But this is where, you know, an old window was. The logs were not chinked. Chinking means that stuffed with, you know, mud and straw and stuff. When John Carson built the home, he wanted the log structure. He put pine boards on the inside and pine boards on the outside. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then this is the part that in 1842, when after John Carson died, and his son, Jonathan Logan, who that's his picture over there with his wife Mary, they are the ones that did all the additions to the home, which is where we're standing right here was an addition. The porch is the 3rd floor, and then the big building out back. Now, one of the things that was used quite a bit to help warm up your bed was, this is a bed warmer. What you would do, it looks like a pan with holes in it, and that's basically what it is. You would fill it with coals out of the fireplace, and then slide it under your bed to try to warm up the bed underneath. The little base over there has a lot of hat pins in it, and ladies always wore hats, and a lot of the adornment they would put on, they would change it from one thing to another by adding the hat pins, and it would help to keep the hat on their head too.
Mm-hmm.
It's just about like a fireplace in every room.
Yeah.
You know, for to keep warm and all these.
In here we have things set up as the Jonathan Logan would have had as his living quarters. This is a hoop that was popular in the around the Civil War period on up till about the turn of the century to help the skirt stand out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the shoes with lots of buttons.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
This right here is an unusual piece. This is actually a fly trap. This piece of glass. You would put something to attract flies in here. Flies would fly in under here and out through here, and since flies don't know enough to fly back down the way they came, they would be trapped.
Oh, cool.
It's amazing the ingenuity that folks had.
Yeah.
Now in this room over here, this is a picture of Emma Rankin. She was this teacher who lived here with the Carsons during the 1860s. Now this right here, this doesn't have anything to do with the Carsons, but it was donated to us. This quilt right here was owned by a missionary who went with the Cherokees on the Trail of Tears to Oklahoma. And it's mostly silk. It's kind of the crazy quilt pattern. All right, watch your head as we go up to the 3rd floor. Now it's a lot darker up here. The 3rd floor has never been painted. This is the way the walls have looked since it was built. And there's no fireplaces up here. So this would have been very cold in the wintertime. Up here we have a collection of a lot of things that have been given to us by folks in McDowell County. Some of the paintings were done of old historic buildings and homes around the county. That one shows the courthouse. It was located like in the front yard where the present courthouse is.
Mm-hmm.
This one right here, at first was to be the Catawba Hotel, but they ran out of money, didn't finish it, and a missionary named Matty Perry bought it, turned it into an academy and an orphanage. But sadly, it burned in the 1920s, and it was located where East McDowell Middle School is presently.
Mm-hmm.
This juror's chair right here, this was in the original courthouse, and it was one of the items they pulled when the town of Marion caught on fire, 1894. That was one of the things that was carried to the middle of the street to try to keep it from being burned. That was one of the original chairs. Here we have several displays about the gold mining industry, and actually there was a bullion company that sold stocks here in Marion. The Carsons were very involved in the gold mining business. Yeah, this was one of the rooms that was built especially to house boarders, people who came short-term, long-term, or just for one night as they were passing through on the stagecoach. So we have lots of beds in here. This is an example of a rope bed. And if you've heard the expression, sleep tight and don't let the bed bugs bite, if you were sleeping in a rope bed, you would take the key, which is just like a wooden tool right here. That's a key, and put it on the knot, and you would tighten it up to tighten the ropes up before you went to bed at night.
Okay. Neat.
Oh, that's
Nice trundle, and
Yeah.
it's wide too. You just slide it the same size as the bed, just short of where you could slide it under. Okay, the bed in the corner there was for laying out the dead. That was not a real common thing, but once funerals started becoming more popular, and people laid out their dead loved one in their homes, a funeral home would bring like this long, skinny bed that would look fancier in your house to lay out your dead loved one. And it was longer and skinnier. A coffin could fit on it if you wanted your loved one laid out that way, or they could be, laid out with a hat and boots and things like that. So that was one of kind of unusual things in here. This right here is a cute little piece of furniture, but it doubles as the chamber pot. Just a little bit nicer looking than just a pot to slide under the bed. It looks concealed as a piece of furniture. And of course, you notice there's several pitchers and bowls, called basins, for washing up and bathing. Most people did not take baths or showers, but they would have a pitcher of water just to wash up with before they went to bed, or wash their hands in the morning. In this room we have, this is the McDowell room, and it is a collection of items that were given to us from different periods from folks in McDowell County. We've got more modern things like typewriters and telephones, to the prehistoric from the Cherokee and Catawba tribes. And over on the wall over there is a map. It's not complete, but it has many of the original land grant owners' names and what's now McDowell County. When the land grants were given out before 1777, this part of North Carolina was Rowan County. It had no western border. Then 1777, what's presently McDowell County was also part of Burke County and Rutherford County. So lines got changed gradually as the years went on. In 1843, it officially became McDowell County from what was originally Burke and Rutherford County. Wooden crutches.
Yeah.
The old wooden crutches.
Mm-hmm.
My mom had one of these. She'd make her own butter and stuff. Did you bump your head?
No,
Oh.
I was
I
watching.
usually try to remember to tell people, duck your head. Gosh, it's so big. It's just, wow. Okay, if you want to head out this way now, I'll grab the keys and.
Yeah, where's the barn at?
Watch your step as you go. There's a lot of walnuts still on the ground.